UFC Shanghai. That's the biggest Asian MMA news this week. And yeah, I saw Shu Harata post that, who manages probably more Japanese fighters, high-ticket Japanese fighters than anybody. He posted that on Twitter yesterday, and I was like, are you sure? Like, really? I mean, I thought that the UFC announced it. They hadn't started selling tickets yet, but I thought that there was nothing left to resolve there. But then, yeah, Aaron Bronstetter confirmed the report, and I started seeing and hearing from fighters and managers that, yeah, it is in fact being moved to Las Vegas on December 9th. The Zhang Mingyang versus Brenton Hibieto fight is canceled due to visa issues. So a total huge mess. All the Road to UFC fights postponed because of visa stuff, getting visas, and that short of amount of time. At this point, it's 3 weeks away. So John Hyung Ko, good colleague of mine, reporting that most likely those Road to UFC fights will be pushed into next year, most likely on probably another Vegas card. I'm wondering, because if you think about it, that first January card on January 13th, basically full from the Apex. So I'm wondering, probably, if I'm just guessing, you're going to see those Road to UFC fights on that February 3rd card in Las Vegas. That one does not have a main event, but it is starting to add a number of fights. Let me just look at who's on that. Yeah, there's still plenty of space on that February 3rd card. I'm seeing we still need a main event and what is that, seven slots if we're going for 13 fights on that February 3rd card. So that would be my guess. I do know that there is a card for February 10th. I don't know anything about location for that card, but it would surprise me if the UFC went to Vegas back-to-back weekends on February 3rd and the 10th after already going to Vegas on January 13th. So as far as why the card was moved, I have not heard anything solid on that. I've asked around, and some people that I talked to were either silent on it or were even like, yeah, we were told by the UFC not to talk to any media. We're not allowed to say anything about it, but yes, it is being moved. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I am really disappointed in that. I feel really bad, mostly for the fans that either had already purchased travel accommodations or the fighters that were, especially the Chinese fighters that were really looking forward to it. I also feel frustrated by it because we already had one East Asian card this year that was supposed to go down in Seoul, canceled, and that was just because Korean Zombie couldn't make that fight to be in the main event. And of course, the UFC never formally announced that card, but everything else was pretty much done except for Korean Zombie being in the main event. They had to move that to Las Vegas. This one they did formally announce, but are having to move. The only thing I have to go off of why it was canceled, I've seen some things out there about it was an issue with the venue. I couldn't exactly fully understand. There's some things I couldn't exactly because of language and translation, I couldn't fully understand. It sounded like it was some just red tape kind of stuff with either the venue or holding an event there. I couldn't totally understand, but at first I wondered if it was maybe an issue with Chris Gutierrez getting a visa to China, because that would be the only reason I would think that, because I'm thinking if they've signed a contract at the arena, then all the red tape of holding an event there has been cleared. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, Chris Gutierrez, they got him kind of at last minute after exhausting all their other options for a main event for Song Yadong. But yeah, so if he couldn't make the fight because of a visa issue, then yeah, I could see why they would want to move it to the States to have some kind of main event that they could hold. Although I did even hear that there was a potential option of having Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker as the main event. I think I did hear John Kavanaugh say that, or Johnny Walker say that this week, that was an option. Of course, that fight is now the main event of the January 13th show. But yeah, I don't know what happened there. I think I'm frustrated because this has happened twice this year. I'm just like, why did all of this feel so last minute? Like they had the date kind of like penciled in for December 9th for a long time, but at least like getting the fights together, putting a card together, everything that needs to be done. Why are these things falling apart 3 weeks before the event? You all are the UFC. You all already had this calendar where you hold 40 shows a year all around the world. You've had shows in China before several times. Why is this happening? Why can we not figure these things out like 6 months in advance? That's what I think I'm really frustrated about. Of course, I don't know exactly what went on. Otherwise, the UFC is a really professional company. This never happens to them. The only other time I can think of where they had to like move an event last minute, besides Seoul, was when the John Jones thing, where they had to move the fight from Vegas to LA. What was that for, like the new end of year show? I don't know, 2018 or 19. That was on like a couple weeks notice. But yeah, they never have to do this. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens to this card. I mean, is this going to be a card with like 8 fights on it? Because that's what how many fights do we have at least confirmed? We don't know. There might be more fights that fall off. So we have Song versus Chris Gutierrez. No danger there because both guys are already in the States. Yeah, a lot of these fighters, of course, half the card are not Asian fighters from Brazil or Australia. So I don't foresee an issue with a lot of these guys, but so Road to UFC fights postponed. Even a lot of these Chinese fighters are either training stateside or like in Thailand, like Song Kanan. He's in Phuket right now. A couple Korean guys, Park Sung Hyung and Park Jun Yong, fighting or training out of Korea. So who knows? I mean, I listened to John Hyung Ko interview Jong Min Yang earlier this week, and he was talking about this crazy process of trying to get his visa renewed. So I know he's had some issues with visa. That's no surprise that fight is off. But so yeah, if you take off those Road to UFC fights, how many fights do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Gosh, we've got 7 fights for this card. Are they really going to have a 7-fight card out of Vegas at like, are they going to keep the same time to keep it for Chinese fans? Starting at 1 a.m. It was going to start at 1 a.m. here in the Pacific. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe just ask around the roster to see if anybody wants a fight, like a last-minute fight. Too bad. Hopefully I hope that they're already like, if I were the UFC, I'd be like, okay, now we're shooting to go back to China in May or June, and let's like get everything locked down. I don't know why I don't know if it was an issue with the Shanghai indoor stadium. I was always perplexed why they didn't go to the Mercedes-Benz arena, since that was a much bigger arena that they had already been to before. I don't know. Maybe it was just a booking thing. Who knows? But there you have it. I'm still asking around, trying to get more info on this, but it is a shame. Sorry to all the Chinese fans. Sorry to all the Chinese fighters. Man, when I look at this card, there was so much, no like huge names, but a lot of great action for the Chinese fans. How many? You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Chinese fighters on the card. You had Li Kai-Wen versus Yi Jia, China versus China fight. Man, really a bummer. I don't know. Maybe if I were the UFC, I would just hold these finals cards, these finals fights, just have them at the Performance Institute in Shanghai, and get as many fans in there as you can. Maybe throw a couple UFC fights on there, have a little compact card, and that would be great. I think that would be. I think that would have been a great plan B, for sure. Even if it's the December 9th show, I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Let's see what happens with UFC Shanghai.